You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello everyone, thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Hey everybody, I'm taking us back to the year 1848. An American naturalist, Thaddeus William Harris, was living in Massachusetts. Now, he was no slouch. He graduated from Harvard in 1820. He founded the Harvard Natural History Society. He was elected a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1827. He was made the Librarian of Harvard in 1831. In 1837, he was appointed one of the commissioners for a zoological and botanical survey of Massachusetts. And in 1841, he published the first edition of the Report on the Insects of Massachusetts, Injurious to Vegetation. So he was a pretty busy guy, I think it's fair to say.
I would say
but I did mention, and into insects, it should be noted. I mentioned at the beginning, though, the year 1848. So supposedly, I've seen stories that in that year, he was at home with one of his, you ready for this? 12 children. Let that sink in, especially you, Victoria, while your children are screaming in the background. Yeah. Imagine if you had 12.
No.
So he was hanging out in the garden with one of those 12 when suddenly his three-year-old child started to cry. And this Thaddeus William Harris realizes that his child was crying because he had picked up a caterpillar.
Oh.
Now, for many parents, they would just soothe their child and move along. But when you're a naturalist who literally helped write the book on insects
You
in your
gotta check
state,
out that caterpillar, first of all.
exactly. Stop, do some investigation. What caused the situation? Now, I really, really hate on this podcast to use the word discovered when it comes to a species, because what it implies is that species don't exist until some white dude writes about them, right? And that's pretty insulting. So what I can say is that the species we're talking about was first studied and formally described by Harris after it caused his child to cry. So what had shown up in their garden came to be called the dagger moth, which I think has the coolest name, and I will admit,
I like that a lot.
Part of why I picked this topic is just because the name is really, really cool.
Did that with sarcastic fringe fish. No judgment.
Yeah, so it's a really cool name for a pretty boring-looking moth. I did not even bother to send you a picture. The first description I read of this moth, though, I was pretty insulted, as it said that it was like unattractive and unlovable creature, or something to that effect. And I'm like,
That's rude.
the person who wrote this certainly must not like moths and insects, because they're all super like cool and fascinating, and this person must have really biased.
Yeah.
And then, then I looked at a picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have to
Now
agree
I have
there.
to Google this.
They're exceptionally dull. Go ahead, Google it if you want. It's dagger moth. They're just some shades of brown. There's really nothing much remarkable about the adults. Okay, but I'm not talking about the adults today. So what isn't dull to me
I'm pretty
is
sure I've seen those.
is the larval stage.
Oh, very fuzzy.
All members, they are fuzzy, and all members of the Lepidoptera order, that's moths and butterflies, start out as caterpillars. So Rachel talked about caterpillar metamorphosis back in episode 21.
Yeah.
So go check that out. But the basic fact is that caterpillars undergo what is called complete metamorphosis, meaning they completely change their physical appearance. Appearance? Is that what I said?
Probably.
Their physical appearance, so that the larva or the caterpillar of the dagger moth looks very different. In fact, completely different from the adult moth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I said I decided to do this story because of the name, but really, back near the end of July, I taught an insect BioBlitz summer camp. I spent 4 days looking for every possible insect that I could find with a group of middle schoolers. And we ended up identifying in 4 days 128 species of insects.
That's awesome.
Really
And one of them-
amazing.
Yeah, it was so fun. And one of them was the dagger moth, right? We found the larval stage, the caterpillar, and guess what happened?
Ooh. Did someone start crying?
Did it pupate?
No one started crying, but one of the kids was like, "Oh, my hand like really itches," right? And so we looked up, and that's where I found out that this is actually one of the founding stories of the dagger moth. Is a child picked it up and started to itch. So, what happens when you pick them up, to be clear, is not a sting or a bite. They have no venom. They do not have stingers. They do not bite. So, but it might help describe what they looked like. And you already kind of hinted at this. But a dagger moth caterpillar is about the size of like a woolly bear caterpillar. If you've ever seen those, a lot of people are familiar with the common brown and black kind of hairy caterpillars that show up.
They're like about an inch and a half or so.
Yeah, about an inch and a half long. The woolly bear caterpillar turns into the Isabella moth, which is terribly confusing and a great example of why common names are terrible. The dagger moth caterpillar turns into the dagger moth. See how that works?
Beautiful.
Yes.
No name change. That's how things should work. But they don't. Like the woolly bear, the dagger moth is covered in hundreds of tiny hairs. And they are mostly sort of a light yellow color with several slightly longer black hairs sticking out. Okay. And the hairs are the cause of this stinging sensation. Now, many listeners have likely picked up a woolly bear caterpillar and had no problems. Their hairs don't seem to irritate humans, but the hairs are there as a defense mechanism because they are extremely irritating when ingested, which we usually don't do. But if you're a bird eating caterpillars and you're eating hairy caterpillars, all those hairs breaking off in your esophagus is
feel good.
extremely
Sticks in your throat a
uncomfortable.
bit.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the hairs in the dagger moth, and many other moths for that matter, can sometimes cause skin irritation, especially in sensitive people. And every once in a while, there's like a viral social media report, like warning parents against, don't let your children play outside. These highly dangerous stinging caterpillars have been spotted in your area. And it's like, oh, come on. Like, I remember actually years ago, my wife showed me one of these on like Facebook and was like, have you heard about this new caterpillar? And it's like, they're not new and they're not dangerous.
It's fine.
The truth is you can let a dagger moth crawl around on your hand as much as you like, and you have essentially no chance of being irritated by the hairs on there. The issue, if there is one at all, is when people squeeze them or cup them tightly in their hands, like children often do.
Right.
Or in the case of probably my camper, they like to use their fingers to pull it out of a net, like a sweep net. And then they squeezed it some,
yeah.
and then their fingers were itching a bunch. So, it can happen. Have no fear, though. It's usually just a passing annoyance and not a cause for major panic. The scientific name for hairs like this is urticating hairs, and there are some that are more dangerous than those that are found on your common backyard dagger moth. All right? Now, as you can imagine, having something or many somethings stuck into your skin can either be annoying and irritating or downright painful, right? They can be especially they can be especially troublesome if they break off or if they get inhaled or into your eyes. Because sometimes you get animals where they break off very easily and they're very light and can get airborne. It can get in your eyes.
No!
Can you imagine that?
That sounds
horrifying.
Extraordinarily painful.
Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here. You know the stingers on stinging nettle?
Yeah.
I was thinking about stinging nettle when you were describing the effects of this this caterpillar.
I was
excellent, because those are also an example of urticating hairs.
Okay.
And they're not hairs. None of these are actual hair.
Right.
I want to point out they're not actual because none of these are from mammals.
Caterpillar.
But basically, the hairs on nettles are actually hollow and function like hypodermic needles. They inject an irritating chemical into your skin. Can you imagine what it would be like if the caterpillar had hairs that were like hypodermic needles and could also inject like poison or venom into you?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Y'all can see
Rachel?
that my eyes got real big.
Rachel,
What?
Victoria can imagine it. And you better start imagining it.
Why should I start imagining it, Kirk? Why?
Well, because there are a few species of caterpillar that do indeed have hollow hairs, and they do inject venom into animals when they are disturbed.
Oh no.
So according to one report I read, some of these venoms can even cause tissue necrosis, meaning tissue death, for where you touched it,
That's
There's
not
a
good.
which is
bad one in Central America, isn't there somewhere? I feel like
we're getting there.
Yeah.
So tissue necrosis would be bad enough, but a very famous example is the giant silkworm moth. Though I do want to point out that's a common name that applies to a number of different individual species. So these caterpillars are found in South America, in areas like Brazil, and an encounter is typically the result of someone like carelessly leaning against a tree and accidentally pressing up against like a whole group of caterpillars, not just one. You're leaning, and they're very camouflaged. So I'm just going to lean against this tree, and all of a sudden it's like you squish like a whole group of them, and you become envenomated, which is the term.
No.
The effects of the venom are, oh man, it's pretty awful. They include massive internal bleeding, followed by kidney failure and hemolysis.
This sounds very
I believe is the
fatal.
term,
Sounds
which
not
is the rupturing of blood cells, which Victoria got it right, can be fatal.
That's
death-
not good.
No, I would tend to agree. Death can either occur the same day or days later, either of which sounds horrifying.
That sounds
I will say
terrible.
it is not always fatal. Obviously, depends on like medical care, how many you touch, things like that. But on each year, on average, there's about one person who dies from an encounter with these caterpillars. So if you do have a run-in with a dagger moth or one of the other like slightly irritating species found in North America, consider yourself lucky. They're really cool looking animals and they don't really hurt you. But just be glad, I guess, you did not have a run-in with the venomous giant silkworm moth instead.
I would
I am
say
thankful.
so. Yeah. I'm gonna think about this for a while now. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, enjoy. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, Rachel, it's your turn.
Woo.
Kirk here with a quick note. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps other lovers of the strange find our show. You can also find and follow us on social media. Search for Strange by Nature Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or come visit us at strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll see you there. Now, back to the show.
Alrighty, everyone. We are back.
Yes, we are.
All right. This week, what I'm going to be talking about is the Hydropotes inermis, also known as the water deer. I probably said it wrong. Please let
Water deer.
Water
All right,
deer.
I'm
water deer.
haven't
oh
heard of
dear,
this.
I'm in. Yeah, I've not heard of this. I don't think I have.
You probably have. It has another common name that I'll get to later.
Okay. You are obfuscating the
Is it a
names
moose?
here on purpose.
No,
It is not
I
a
know
moose.
I know the Latin name of that. It's not what you just said.
It's not Elsie's.
Alces.
Yeah. So there are. I'm so excited. Okay, so there are two species of the water deer.
Okay.
There's the Chinese water deer and there's the Korean water deer. Okay.
Okay.
It was first
Gotcha.
described to the Western world by Robert Swinhoe in 1870. And this mammal actually was thought to be a musk deer for certain reasons that we'll get into in a little bit, but is actually part of the true deer family. It is a cervid. It's in part of Cervidae.
Okay.
Cervidae, yeah.
So it's found in the coastal regions of the Jiangsu, the Yangtze River, the Zhejiang of China, and the demilitarized zone of Korea. Okay. So
Okay.
of those species, the
Right.
China ones and then there's the China bit, and then there is the demilitarized zone of Korea. The ones in China are actually more threatened and actually critically endangered. But the Korean water deer is
DMZ actually great for wildlife.
It turns out.
They're doing
turns out keeping
fine.
people out
everywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
It's generally found, as its name might imply, it is generally found alongside rivers. It loves marshes and swamp as habitat. You'll never guess, but they are great swimmers. They are...
Oh, shocking.
Who would have guessed? They are capable of swimming several miles to different isolated islands. Okay.
Not that unusual for the deer family.
No, not very unusual. They can be found on mountains and grasslands. There's also, on a different side note, a sizable population, somewhere around 600 in a town or area called Whipsnade in Great Britain, where this particular deer...
Wait, what?
There's a sizable population of...
Imported, I'm going to guess.
Imported.
This story just took a major left-hand turn that I was not prepared for.
There's a sizable population... About a little.
Yeah, when she said Whipsnade, I'm like, well, she's probably pronouncing that wrong.
No, around 600 or more actually in Whipsnade in Great Britain. There's actually more where this deer was introduced in the 1870s to the London Zoo, and then some fancy lord or whatever got really interested and transferred them to another, like his estate or something like that, and from the London Zoo in like 1986, and so there were escapees, and now there is just a stable population just hanging out in
of course there is.
Of course there
is.
Now these deer are about 3.3 feet tall at the shoulder. They're pretty little. They're really small. They have a longer neck, but I wasn't able to get like their exact height, including the neck. I am taller than them, though. I will take that.
Yeah, that's a really, really common thing for animals. They measure
the shoulder.
The shoulder and don't include the total height, which I think we talked about this when we talked about moose.
Yeah.
It's such a strange deal.
I think it comes from how we measure a horse, because
that's how the biologists do.
Mm-hmm. They're anywhere from 20 to 31 pounds. So these are really small little deer.
Aww.
Okay? Pocket deer, almost.
Yeah. And generally speaking, they look kind of cute. They have really long legs and a somewhat long neck, and their hind legs are actually longer than their front legs. So when they run, they actually run with like little rabbit-like jumps.
Aww.
Which is really cute.
Is there a butt?
I sort of feel like Rachel's going to reveal that they suck blood or something really disturbing.
Like they're really cute, but
I'm going to harken back to Victoria's comment in a minute.
Wow. Okay. All right.
For reasons.
You have my attention.
So they also have an inguinal gland that they use for scent marking around their groin area, which is actually very interesting because no other cervidae has that. These deer also do not ever grow antlers. They don't grow antlers. That's not a thing, which is also strange. Generally speaking, they're like a golden brown color with a white underneath with little rounded ears. They look really cute and adorable.
But
vampire deer?
But what makes these deer especially strange is what drives this more common name, which could be one of two, the vampire deer.
Really?
No!
Really? Or the fanged deer.
I didn't Google this.
I am dead serious. Fanged deer.
Wait, what's the second one? Fanged deer. Okay.
It's their.
I feel like I've seen a picture of a little deer with like big.
That's a real.
Teeth.
That's a real picture. Yeah. So the buck's canine teeth. Okay, these little cute little deer. The buck's canine teeth can grow to be anywhere from 2.2 to 3.1 1 inches long.
Let the record show that when she said that, Rachel was holding her fingers about 8 inches apart.
At least 5.
Right. Yeah. It's about that far. But like on a little tiny deer, that's really weird.
See, now I would have gone with like saber-toothed deer.
Right.
You know, that sounds pretty wicked.
The thing is, they look like fangs.
Sure.
Yes.
And they do protrude from the upper jaw of the deer. Obviously, you can't hold that in your mouth very easily.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that I'm going to assume, based on my basic understanding of mammalian morphology, that they are not hollow and used for sucking blood.
They are not. No, they do not suck blood.
Right.
They don't do any of that.
That's disappointing.
I know Victoria is so disappointed right now.
I'm gonna say another thing that is very sad as well. The does of their canine teeth are only about 0.2 inches long, so they're also very short, which is disappointing. However,
the ladies got to step up their game.
I know, or at least the deer do. But the reason why they have these tusks. Okay, hey, I'm moving past that. Okay, the reason why these deer have these tusks, have these teeth, is actually kind of interesting. They're super territorial. So it is a way for them to fight or to show dominance, but it's also a mating thing for them. When they're also able to draw them backwards because they are herbivores. They're not meat suckers or anything like that. So they can control these teeth in their with their facial muscles, and they can draw them backwards out of the way while they're eating.
They're hinged fangs.
Wow, that's really cool.
So they're like super loose in the socket, so they're still in there, but they're able to control it with their facial muscles, which is super fascinating. So generally speaking, they thrust them forward a bit when they're in aggressive encounters, and just the teeth in general is why I wanted to talk about these particular deer. It's mainly the males that have these really large canines. The longer the canine you have, the more attractive you are to potential females.
Right.
And they are actually able to use like a clicking sound, which potentially is made with those canines as well as their teeth. It's really kind of unknown how they make those particular sounds. Noises, yeah. That's pretty much all I have for you both, actually, today. I just wanted to talk about this really strange fanged deer.
Wow.
Because you don't picture
I so wish you had done this story last week when I was talking about blood-sucking mosquitoes. It would have lined up so nicely.
It would have, but I saved it for this week.
Oh, good.
And that's what I have for you both today. So I think we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, it'll be Victoria.
And we're back. I also just want to acknowledge before I begin that if you've been listening to our podcast, you probably heard my children in the background at some point. I have 2.5-year-old twins and not a really good place to record in my household. So they are loud. And that happens. So
they add to the ambiance.
Yes.
I like your children. They're so cute.
I like them too, except when I'm trying to record a podcast.
There is that.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right, to move on.
Today's topic, infanticide.
Oh my God.
I already did that, didn't I?
Yeah, you kind of did, actually, yeah.
Yeah. I think we know where she got the idea. Yeah. Oh, the podcast just got real dark. You're welcome.
We're gonna take a turn away from the biological world, actually. Mm-hmm. And I took an intro to geology class in my senior year of college.
I love geology.
I
Yay.
loved it too.
That topic rocks.
Thanks, Kirk. That was
Oh, you're
really
welcome.
necessary, I'm sure.
Look, I'm a dad. I can't help it. I mean,
That's fair. It was right there. It was low hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's my son. You
truly.
can hear right now. Very upset about
I
something.
love how they were quiet when you were talking about how loud they are, and then when you start talking about your topic, they just launch right in.
Yeah.
It's truly beautiful.
Anyway, geology. I loved it. Possibly if I had taken it freshman year, I would have wound up a geology major.
Ooh.
But of course, one of the things you learn about in Intro to Geology is earthquakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our professor showed us a film that I still remember today. It was made in 1971, so the look and feel was a bit dated by the time I saw it in the early aughts. But it was well made, and it made a big impression on me. The title, San Francisco, the city that waits to die.
Oh, wow.
That's so dark.
Yes. Basically, the film calls out the stupidity of development patterns in San Francisco, given the inevitability of major earthquakes in the area. And in fact, I think the film actually had some influence on improving building codes in California.
Good.
Right.
I bring this film up partly because the title is so memorable, but also because I remember my geology professor talking about which U.S. city would now be the most likely to take the title of the city that waits to die.
All right.
Oh,
A couple of his suggestions, as I recall them: Seattle, the city that waits to die, or
For a slightly different reason, but yeah.
St. Louis, the city that waits to die.
All right.
So some of you listeners, and maybe Kirk and Rachel, I don't know, were probably nodding along with me until that last one, right?
Yeah.
Most people know that the West Coast is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, Earthquake, and Volcano Zone. And, Seattle
if Rainier blows, Seattle's gone.
Yeah, Mount Rainier is right outside Seattle, and that's going to be problematic when that happens.
Yep.
But might have been a record scratch for you when I said St. Louis. Okay.
Is that anywhere near the town of New Madrid?
Well, depends what you mean by near, but this is where I am going, Kirk. Yes.
Awesome.
I think I know where you're going, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah. A little geological history lesson. From December 1811 through February 1812, the area around New Madrid, which, by the way, is spelled Madrid, but pronounced Madrid.
Right. But of course, we pronounce it Madrid. Yeah.
New Madrid,
That's
Missouri.
Infuriating.
Tell that to the folks in Montevideo, Minnesota.
Or
Anyway.
in Pierre out in the Dakotas. Yeah.
Or Cairo,
Yeah.
Illinois. Yeah, there's a whole list.
All right. Anyways.
New Madrid,
So
Missouri.
many lists.
They suffered a series of devastating earthquakes. This area is near the border of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. So a lot of states come together right there.
Right.
White people had only sparsely settled this area at the time, and it was about 160 miles from St. Louis, 130 miles from Memphis, and about 200 miles from Nashville. So just to give you a little bit of a sense. So at the time, this was the extreme western frontier of U.S. territory. And so, the white folks are mainly the source of written eyewitness accounts that we have. I'm sure there were lots of Native people living in the area at the time, too, but we didn't get their side of the story.
No one asked them, unfortunately.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So these were massive, massive quakes. They caused the banks of the Mississippi River to collapse in some places. In some places, they made the river run backwards temporarily.
That's crazy.
Buildings were damaged in St. Louis and Cincinnati. This is like more than 100 miles away. So based on the contemporary descriptions of the damage and, subsequent geological research about evidence of these quakes, they've estimated that the magnitude ranged from 7 up to as high as 8.6 for the last and strongest earthquake.
Whoa.
Yes.
And that's a logarithmic scale for those playing at home. The difference between 7 and 8 is not 1.
It is not
Pretty effing strong.
Yeah.
In fact, these are the second strongest estimated earthquakes in the lower 48 states. Yeah.
That will break your china.
Indeed.
Yeah, it will. Also, hold on. This is in a landlocked, not...
We're getting there.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I think
You're
Rachel has
asking the right
discovered the
questions.
crux of... Yes.
I mean, I've
the
heard of
topic,
this, so
but
I know, but it's still very much... It is nowhere near a fault line.
You don't see it coming.
Yeah.
Literally.
Another interesting factor is that due to differences in the underlying rocks in the east versus the west of North America, earthquake shocks in the east travel a really long way, much farther than on the west coast. So these 1811, 1812 earthquakes were felt as far away as Hartford, New Orleans, and Charleston. So from New Madrid to Hartford is like 1,000 miles, about the same distance as San Francisco to Phoenix. So just let that sink in for a moment.
My jaw is on the floor.
Now, getting back to what Rachel just alluded to, if you know the basics of plate tectonics, you might be wondering about these quakes because most earthquakes occur at the edges of a tectonic plate where they interact with other plates.
Right, like the Ring of Fire,
Missouri
like you were
is
talking about.
right in the middle
Right.
of a North American plate. It's very far away from any boundary. So
Yeah.
they call these intraplate earthquakes. They're pretty rare, and they are not well understood in terms of what causes them or how frequently they're likely to reoccur. I'm not going to enlighten you scientifically very much because basically the geologists don't know, but one hypothesis is that long ago the North American plate started to rift in this spot, but eventually the rifting stopped and it kind of left a weak
Right.
spot. So that's one possibility.
Okay.
The geological record does show large quakes in the area in 1450, 900, and 300 CE. And there's some evidence for large quakes before that in sort of other nearby seismic zones dating back as far as 4800 BCE.
Okay.
And
Okay.
since 1812, there have been a few largish quakes in the New Madrid seismic zone. The largest, was in 1895 with an estimated magnitude of 6.6, which is it's pretty big.
That's large. Yeah.
Yeah. Since seismic monitoring equipment was installed nearby in 1974, there have been about 4,000 earthquakes in the area, but most have been too small to feel. And there's about one
good.
earthquake per year large enough for folks to feel. So the upshot of this is some scientists think we might expect another large earthquake there, and some scientists think that the fault is basically kind of just slowed down.
That was it.
Yeah.
And we don't know. But you can bet that building codes in Nashville and St. Louis are
prepared.
not up to California standards.
No.
So if
Not
it
for
does
an
happen,
earthquake.
that's going to be real bad.
No one has
Look,
earthquake insurance in Nashville.
When have humans ever been overly confident and end up surprised by nature?
Do you want chronological?
Oh, wait, all the time. All the time, right, all the time. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look at how many times we have had massive fires in a city and then built the city back up in the same way, only for it to burn
Or
down
floods, for
again.
example.
Or flood.
Floods. Or earthquakes.
Earthquakes, yeah.
Or tsunamis. Or volcanic explosions.
Tornadoes.
We have very, very short memory.
Yeah, we do. Look at us go.
So, who knows?
That's
might happen,
fascinating,
might not.
though. It's really interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
Minnesota, though, is one of the most geologically stable areas of the country, so we got that going for us.
But even here, we have had recorded earthquakes.
What?
Just a total random, look it up. There's just random earthquakes out of nowhere, usually about a magnitude like 3.0, somewhere around there with one of the bigger ones. And it's just like, why, what? Very strange.
Very bizarre.
Well, let's just hope no one starts fracking down by that fault line and lubricating up that fault real well with some fracking fluid.
They're probably doing
And,
that already, aren't they?
I'm
I didn't
sure
look
they
that
are.
up.
Probably.
Maybe I can make an addendum.
Well,
next
if
week.
anything happens, we'll talk about it here on the show.
There we go.
And everyone will be like, wow, what a timely topic.
Beautiful.
All right.
Well, thanks, Victoria.
Great talking to you. You're welcome.
Yeah, great talking to everyone. Thanks for some fascinating, strange topics.
Talk to you next week.
Next week, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.